how would you define a teachable moment? How would you describe a teachable moment?
I describe a teachable moment. This is a moment when everyone is poised, or when a student has a question and the student is poised and needs some language.
Right.
And this is a teachable moment. This is when I can slip the language in and the student is happy to have it. This is what he needs.
It means something to him right now.
It means something to me. If these students are here saying, they're wondering, what did you? They just don't know what you have to do.
Yes.
Somebody finds it. If somebody doesn't find it, well, then I'm going to have to give it to them.
Yes.
But usually somebody finds it because they start thinking out of the box, if you like.
Right.
But everyone is poised. And this is what's important. They are absolutely with the problem. There's a big problem. They're with the problem. And then suddenly the problem has a solution. And all this tension that the problem creates. This is how you know you have a problem. You have a problem because you have a tension in you.
Yeah.
And so here we are with our problem. And then the answer comes and the tension goes down and it takes the answer with it.
It takes the answer with it, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So the answer then is in the students. And what you see then is that for the rest of what goes on in that class, everybody is going to say, what did you do?
Sure.
And it's exaggerated, but my goodness.
And suddenly they're sensitive to something about English, which is how we have focus, what we do with focus in the class, how we create that. And that sensitivity is priceless, because that's at the core of the core of what English is all about.
It needs to be adjusted, but I'm not worried about adjusting it. Once they get out into the wide world, they will see exactly how it's done and they'll be able to do it. But what I want them to know is this is how it's done, and that is by far the best way of getting them to discover that this is how it's done.
I'm struck by how when children learn language, they learn language in very vivid situations. It's absolutely clear that when talking about the curtains, it's because mummy is closing the curtains or whatever. The richness of the environment which a child picks up or acquires language is so different from the potentially impoverished environment in most language classrooms.
Yes.
And yet when we have teachable moments, these are moments when the students need language. I mean, it's the nearest we can get to in a class to the natural learning experience of coming up with L1.
Yes. And there's another factor to it as well. My job, if you like, is to keep them on the very edge, the cutting edge between what they know and what they don't know.
Right.
And the only way I can discover that, in fact, is by getting them to express themselves, and then what's correct they have, and what's not correct they don't have.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing is inching forward, if you like, just a little bit of language by little bit of language. And what I know is that every time I correct something, that correction is a moment for that student. He needs to know how you do it correctly.
Yes.
For me, it's really extremely important to correct people. This is really very, very, very important.
Right.
Because I don't want them stuck. I don't want them stuck with bad quality language. They didn't come along to learn just any old thing. They came along to learn English. I'm sure when they went to their first English class, it wasn't to learn mediocre English.
Sure.
It was to learn English.
Yeah.
And I think this is what people want. Now, this again is not what people are saying at the moment. What they're saying at the moment is, well, as long as they can communicate, that's fine. The message gets across, that's fine. But some of my students might want to become English teachers, and I can't compromise this for them. I can't put them in a situation where their English is so spotty, so incoherent, so filled with mistakes that they will have a dreadful time trying to get it really up to scratch.
Well, now might be a moment to talk about Terminal 2s, because it's not as if the communicative approach has absolutely swept the world and has never had any critics. Even within the early years, people were noticing that there was a problem with the communicative approach.
That's right, yes.
And the Terminal 2s, so-called Terminal 2s, are a very good example of that. Now, why don't you start talking about the Terminal 2s, and I'll fill in anything you don't say about them, I'll say about the Terminal 2s.
Right. This was an article, the people who invented the term Terminal 2 Plus were Higgs and Clifford.
That's right.
And they were working at the Foreign Institute, the Foreign, what was it? The
Foreign Service Institute. I think they taught diplomats. They were teaching they needed to teach people in America to speak foreign languages at a very high standard.
Exactly. And what they found was that people who had learnt languages were either on the street or with an approach which did not demand of them correction,
Yeah.
that they ended up with so many mistakes that on a 5-point scale, where 0 is you a beginner and 5 is you speak the language at a very, very high level, in European terms that would be C2, for example,
Sure.
that people got stuck at what they called Terminal 2, or a little bit more.
Well, stuck at level 2, and they called it terminal because they got stuck there. Yeah.
That's right. So this was the end of their learning experience. What they could do is give themselves more English,
Yes.
but they were not able to progress to level 3 because
Right.
they couldn't give themselves better English.
Right.
And this is, I feel that I have a moral obligation to keep the way open for my students to go right through to level 5 if this is what they want. If they want to stop at level 2, that's fine.
Yes.
But it should not be, I should not put them in a position where I have made this decision for them.
Yeah.
This means that I should work on quality constantly.
Yeah.
Right? Their English, I should hold them to high quality. If after that they decide to let it go, that's their problem.
Yeah.
But they really, I have a moral obligation to keep the way open to level 5.